I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com. Today we're going to install a Hindle full exhaust system on my marketing manager Dalton's 2008 Yamaha YZF-R6 track bike. Okay, Hindle Exhaust. It's brand new to our website, but not brand new to the US market. The new distributor is Woodcraft. That's a company we've got a ton of experience with. They are famous for parts that make sense. Think performance, think value with anything Woodcraft offers, which is exactly where Hindle falls in. Here is the new can design. We've got a carbon fiber tip with a titanium canister, okay? Stainless steel tubing. Give an idea of the quality of the welds. Hindle has always been known for making excellent power. Today with this video, what we're going to focus on is the fit, finish, and installation of the Hindle product, and then of course, what's it going to sound like on Dalton's bike once we're done with it. As far as the removal of the stock system, you can see the stock system is not on this motorcycle anymore. Dalton just picked this one up. It's obviously used, 2008, and it's got this gorgeous Micron MotoGP slip-on on here, man, which he is really excited to get rid of because, honestly, it's a piece of Okay, just to give you an idea, this bike is a 2008, and you can see a little corrosion here on these studs. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit each one of these with a little bit of WD-40, use something like that just to really hedge your bet so it comes apart nicely. The last thing you want to do is break off an exhaust stud when you're installing your system. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure our exhaust gaskets look good, right? It's important that we're able to keep them in place while we install the header on the bike. A couple of ways that I've done this. One is use just a tiny little bit of silicone and put it on the gasket, and that will hold it in place and give us ample time to install the head pipes. Another way that I've done that is use a little bit of grease. Either one renders a good result. Okay, showed you the little gasket trick. The reason I had the gaskets out is we want to take a look at them and make sure that they would be okay to reuse. There's a lot of companies out there, they recommend, hey, put new gaskets in every time you do it. That's kind of a cover your backside gig. They do say right in here to inspect them. If they look okay, go ahead and reuse them. In all the years I've done this, I've never put a new set of exhaust gaskets in. They've always been able to be reused. Make your decision what you're comfortable with and go that route. We were good, they all look great, so I put them back in there. The instructions from Hindle, at the end of the day, they're detailed but vague all at the same time, all right? Because they're not model specific, we don't really have any specific pictures. What it does say is the first thing that we need to do is to install the spigots and the flanges. They have all come pre-installed. When I say pre-installed, they've slid into the head pipes like so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the appropriate spigot and flange and put it on the corresponding cylinder, okay? When we do this, we are only going to put the nuts on finger tight. We won't tighten anything up until we've got the entire system built, because by tightening it, it could cause binding, and then you'd have a very difficult time getting the entire system assembled and lined up. As you can see, it slides over the studs very easily. What we will do at a later date, and when I say we, I mean Dalton in a tube of high temp copper silicone, he'll clean off the WD-40 with some brake cleaner that we put on here, okay? And he will go ahead and put a little high temp silicone right here. Once the nuts are tightened, it'll just hold it in place. That way vibrations won't cause it to come loose, and he won't have any issues when riding. All right, just like we did with the first one, okay, we're going to position the flange so that the holes for the springs are all on the bottom, facing the ground. We're going to go finger tight with the nuts. One thing that is very, very critical here, and I see this get messed up quite often, see mistakes made here, is you want to get this set up so that when you have these nuts tightened down, this flange tightened down, that you have an equal amount of thread poking out or showing on each side. So you don't have the flange pulling harder on one side than the other. It's important you have a good even pull. Rest of this here, we're gonna put the other two on, and then we'll come back and we'll start installing the down tubes. Okay, all the spigots are on, flanges are finger tight. We are ready to install our head pipes. What I like to do is I like to take just a little bit of anti-seize, and I'm going to put it inside the joint, the female end of the joint. It's going to do a couple of things for us. One, it's going to allow the pipes to go together a whole heck of a lot easier. And if in fact you ever need to take this off, it's going to go a long way towards making that happen easily. All right, so now, and this is why we leave everything finger tight right now, okay? So it's going to make installing this much easier. Go ahead and get that lined up. And wow, that actually went on there really good. Now, the next step is going to be installing the springs. They're nice enough at Hindle to supply this spring tool, which is going to be pretty beneficial. We're going to take the spring and I'm going to put it on the flange. There are two holes on each flange. I'm going to use the one that is closest to the attachment point, and then we will use the spring tool and give it a good pull. Slide that in, make sure we've got it all the way up. We will go on the other side of the bike here and install the other spring, but for now, let's get the other head pipe mounted on the bike. All right, same gig. I'm gonna put just a real thin layer of anti-seize in there. Really doesn't take much. See how well this side lines up. It's pretty impressive. That is something that with a lot of the systems, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I've struggled with before, for sure. Let's go ahead and get a spring on this so we can finish up sliding the header together. Next step will be putting the collector on. Put one more spring on, then we're gonna do that. Get everything held in place for me. Make sure we're up all the way. And next up is going to be our collector. I'm going to go ahead and put a little lube in here and then get it fitted up. We are ready to get the collector up here, mid-pipe. Get a thin coat of this on. Really important to note too, before we start this motorcycle, we are going to thoroughly clean all the pipes, canister, everything. We need to get all of my greasy fingerprints off before you start the motor. Don't start it, not even for a second, until you have got it perfectly clean. Notice how I'm kind of wiggling everything together here, putting some forward pressure. I really want to draw that mid-pipe all the way up on the collectors. Okay, right now is the time to do that. Got one spring on each side. We've got another spring for each side of the head pipes that we need to put on. So when we come back, I'll have the springs fitted up and we're going to begin putting the exhaust bracket on and then the canister. Then we'll tighten up our flanges and move on back. Now we're ready to install the exhaust bracket. Once again, there's no instructions here, okay? Looking at this, you know, to me it appears that this has the same spacing as the rear set mount brackets, the cutouts. It's got to go behind the rear set itself. So we will not be reusing the exhaust bracket that is attached to the Vortex rear sets that are on here now, so we'll remove that. We've also got a couple of stock exhaust brackets that are on the motorcycle now that there's no need for them to be there. We're going to eliminate those, and last but not least, we will also be eliminating Dalton's X-Up Servo. We've got a Servo eliminator here, right, from Servo Buddy, Scooter Net, also a Woodcraft distributed product. So when we come back, I will have this bracket off of these Vortex rear sets. You can see these bolts are fighting a little bit coming out. We'll get this off. I will pull the rear set off and we'll install the new Hindle bracket. Okay, I got the Vortex bracket off. We're not going to use that. Now we will pull the mounting bracket off for the rear sets here at the frame. And while we've got this off, this is going to be a good time to cut the zip ties that are here for the X-Up valve, right? Because we're going to be getting rid of the servo motor. These rear sets have probably been on here a while. There was definitely a little corrosion on the bolts for the exhaust bracket, and pretty average stuff for a 2008 bike. Not a big deal. We'll make sure we take a good look at the threads, but not really too worried about it, because it doesn't feel like they're galling, it just feels like it's a little corroded. Yeah, you can see the threads are good. Bike did have a little low side on the right side too, so that could have a little something to do with this issue. All right. Bracket is off. Let's go ahead and get these cable ties cut. And while we have this off, we may as well kind of take a peek back here and see if we should just chase after the servo motor right now and save ourselves a little headache. You know, we've really got a lot of stuff exposed here, so what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and address that right now. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of pull out the rear brake reservoir real quick. You know, and this is something I think a lot of folks, if you're installing a full system, you know, this is something that you're quite likely going to have to do at the same time. Another thing that's really important when doing a full system is you're going to want to install block-off plates, smog block-off plates. Pull the airbox, the whole gig. We've got videos on multiple bikes showing that. As a matter of fact, Dalton actually has to do that to this bike because it still has that whole system on there. So now we've got this loosened up. Let's see, I'm going to slide this bad boy right out of there. Unplug it. Okay, and there is your exhaust servo. Away it goes. And here is our Servo Buddy from Scooter Net. Okay, obviously I'm going to have to bolt this bracket back up here, and then what I'm going to do is, you know, we're going to take our time later, and this is probably going to be a Dalton project. He's going to want to route this up into the tail, okay, and put some cable ties in it and do a really nice job securing it. And I'm going to leave that part for him. But what I will do for him is cut the cable ties and make sure that I'm putting them in a good position to get that done. But right up in the frame right there is going to be a really nice spot for that. So just kind of get that started for him up there and we'll let him finish it up. We need to make sure that we bolt the bracket back to the frame of the bike like so, because that holds our rear brake reservoir in place. So just locate that mounting bolt, put this bad boy back in there. We're going to tighten it up, and then we'll be ready to mount up that exhaust bracket. Okay, I just just tossed that up in there, right? I mean, that is not secured. Dalton's gonna have to take the tail off. That is a Dalton project, not a Brian project. So let's get the rear brake reservoir bracket back up on there. And now let's have a look at this exhaust bracket. You know, once again, you know, I'm not trying to bang on them, but we don't have instructions, so you know, we need to get an idea of how is this going to fit in there. It's pretty much has to go in that direction. So a couple of things you could do here. You know, we had issues with the bolts coming out. We could grab a little bit of Loctite. That would help lubricate the threads a little bit so we could get this thing back together a little bit easier. Right? You could use a little bit of grease. And I'm going to leave that up to you, but you know, these attachment points here, it's really not a bad idea to use a little Loctite, so I'm going to grab some right now. It's going to be time to install that exhaust bracket. A couple of things I want to do here for Dalton. We're going to pull off this exhaust hanger that's not in use. Take a little weight off the bike, and beyond that, there's just really no point in leaving this. The person that put the Micron on there, they had to use this as it had the pipe mounted up to it, but you know what? We don't have to, so off it comes. There's one on the other side. We'll remove that later. That'll probably happen off camera. One of the things I want to check is we're a little tight here with that O2 sensor, and that's something Dalton and I were actually talking about off camera. So what we're going to need to do is get the O2 sensor out of this harness here. There's a couple of attachment points here. I want to get this loosened up and see if we can't get some slack to help us install that. Some rerouting could be possible, but first we'll see if we can do it quickly and easily right here. Somebody's already, you know, done a fair amount of work in here, the rear sets and stuff, and they've added the brake light pressure switch. Let's go ahead and see if we can't get that O2 harness out of here. And I think the position we're going to be in right now, I think we're going to have to do a full-on reroute. I don't see this having enough. That's going to be way too tight right there for sure. So what's going to happen is we're going to have to get up in here, disconnect our O2, and reroute it so that it is on the other side of the swing arm pivot right here where it meets the frame. The new exhaust bracket mounts up right here behind the rear set. You see how it fits right in there? Piece of cake, right? Now, remember how hard those bolts came out? I've already tried to thread it back in there, and honestly, it wasn't very happy. These holes are corroded. The threads aren't galled, nothing's really damaged, but still, if we don't clean these up now by using this tap, he's going to have nothing but trouble down the road. So, you know, a couple seconds of extra work here will go a long way when it comes to servicing the bike in the future. I'm going to do this for both holes. You can see it's going in very easy. All we're really doing is just cleaning a little corrosion out of the threads and the aluminum. I will, of course, repeat this process on the top. And there's the same mounting bolt. If you remember with a T-handle, I could barely get it out of there, and look at the difference right now. So that's worth the extra step for sure. Okay, now we're ready to install the bracket supplied by Hindle. That is going to be pinched between the frame and the rear set mounting bracket. We're going to use our stock fasteners here. Remember, I cleaned up the threads in these holes, so the bolts are going to thread in quite nicely. Now, if you choose to, you can use Loctite here. Not a horrible idea to do that. This is something that Dalton's going to be revisiting as he gets the bike ready for the track. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and tighten this up, and he'll run through all this later. So it's going to pinch the bracket between the frame and the rear set mount. Then we'll be ready to put the footrest part of the rear set back on. And I'm just going to put it in the same holes they were in before. And once we've done this, we'll be ready to mount up our O2 sensor, our canister, and then we'll tighten up the bolts for the header. Go ahead and remove this plug. If you're not going to be using an O2, okay, if that's been eliminated for any reason, I would recommend checking the tension on that plug, because from the factory that wasn't really very tight, so that could vibrate out. See what I did there with the oxygen sensor? Kind of wound it in the other direction, and then we will, as we tighten it, it's going to straighten that out. Okay, and then we'll have to manage the additional slack in that harness as we go, and that'll be something that'll be secured essentially a little more up on top of the engine over here. For now, we'll just kind of give that a little pull in the upward direction. Good to go. Now we're ready to slide the canister on and then mount up the strap. Just like we did with all the other joints, we're going to go ahead and put just a very thin film of anti-seize on here to make this go on easier, and then if you ever have to pull it off, it'll come off a lot easier. You don't want to put a ton. Stuff can get hot and run out, so that's just a little bit. Slides right on, no problem. Now we've got two springs, okay, they're going to hold this on, and we're going to have to install those from the other side. So I'll switch sides on the bike. We're going to mount up the springs and then put our strap on. Okay, get those both in position like so, and now we'll go back to the other side of the bike and get the canister strap up. Okay, here's the hardware for the mounting strap to attach it to the bracket. It's a locking nylock style nut, 2 washers, and then of course an Allen. I had to force the or install the rubber gasket onto the stainless steel strap. Essentially it has a channel on each side, so it really fits on here quite nicely. Pretty standard stuff. I kind of compared the shape of this to the shape of the canister. We're going to install it this way. Slide it down into position, and I'm going to mount it on the outside portion here of the canister, kind of get things into position. Now I'm going to pull the strap up like so, so it's really holding the can nice. And this actually fits really good. You could safety wire this, right? Some organizations may require that. Truth be told, with this nylock style nut, it's not going to come loose. And that's the reason why they supply a nylock nut for this, because what you don't want to have happen is that canister strap come loose. Okay, now I've got this, I didn't tighten that yet. I've got everything lined up Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to tighten down our exhaust flange nuts. As I said before, you want to make sure you're getting a good even pull for each nut on each individual flange. What you don't want to do is have more threads exposed, right, with one nut as compared to the other. So I'm going to start off by just getting them snug with the ratchet. Really not putting any force on it yet. I'm going to make sure they're nice and even. I'm going to repeat this all the way down, right, from cylinder to cylinder. And then once I've done this, I'll come back and I will apply good even torque to each one. End of the day, it's really important, take your time here and make sure that that's perfectly even. Additionally, what I would like to see happen, and Dalton will take care of this when we're done, he's going to put a little bit of high temp silicone right here, okay, right on the exposed threads and the nut. That's just enough, it'll stick to that so it won't allow that nut to vibrate off. When we come back, we're going to be ready to tighten up the canister, clean up the work table, clean the exhaust, and then start the bike. Okay, now we're ready to tighten up the canister strap. We're going to clean the headers and the canister. To do this is pretty basic stuff here. Just going to go ahead and get the backup wrench on here and run it down. So far, I'll have to say I'm really pleased with the way the system fits. The tolerance is everywhere, the way it's slipped together. I would say that Hindle's done an excellent job with fitment. Okay. And now I'm going to use brake cleaner to clean the header, and then I'm going to use WD-40 to clean our titanium canister. And when we're done with all that, because remember, you leave any greasy fingerprints on this bad boy, okay? And you start it up, those fingerprints are going to be on there for all time. They're going to burn right into the titanium, even into the stainless steel. So you definitely want to get the grease off of it before you run the bike. So when we come back, we're going to be ready to start Dalton's R6. Okay, there we go. We've got it all cleaned up. You see the system looks great. We warmed up the engine a little bit, okay? Dalton does not have any electronics on this bike right now, just stock EC. We've got no power command or nothing. That's something he is going to want to consider as he moves forward, so you can get a good fuel map in the bike for a full system. Now let's give you an idea what it sounds like. Sounds great, looks great, the fitment of it is really good. Something that is pretty likely is now that he's got the full system on the bike, and it's definitely different than that Micron, there is a possibility when he fits his race lower, because remember, a race lower is different than stock bodywork, okay? He may have to do a little trimming at the very back. We'll see once he goes to fit that up, but that varies from bike to bike, and that's going to really only be a concern with race bodywork from time to time. And remember, each race bodywork manufacturer is going to have a slightly different mold, so you may have to do a little trim at the back, you may not. This is our Hindle full exhaust system installation and review on a 2008 Yamaha R6. I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com. Whoa!